I am John Harper, a man who once believed that my life was a happy story. 18 years of marriage, 3 children, a thriving business. I thought I had it all. But everything came crashing down in a single day when I heard the words she said. Rachel walked into the living room where I was sitting, holding the cup of coffee she had prepared for me since early morning, just like every day. She always did this, until there were changes I didn't know about. Her eyes no longer held the joy or care they once did. I could sense something heavy in the air, but I couldn't figure it out. What's going on, Rachel? I put the coffee cup down and looked into her eyes, feeling that something big was about to happen. What's going on? She asked in return, her voice calm, as if she was trying to hold something back. John, I want us to talk. I can't continue living like this anymore. A cold wave washed over me. The air in the room seemed to freeze. I stared at her, waiting for an answer, but a vague feeling overwhelmed me. Had these years just been a facade? And inside, Rachel no longer loved me? I want a divorce, she said, without hiding it, without covering it up. And I've made my decision. We stayed silent for a few seconds, and I felt the heaviness in the space. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. I looked at Rachel, searching for signs of a joke, a sudden change that didn't make sense. But there was nothing but that cold look. Why? I asked, my voice trembling, feeling a part of myself collapse. Rachel looked at me, her face unchanged. I can't live with someone I don't love anymore. Do you know? I've been living a fake life for so long. You're not the person I want to be with anymore, John. It felt like a punch to my heart. I couldn't believe the words she was saying, but I couldn't deny the reality that everything was falling apart before my eyes. Why now? Why not tell me sooner? I tried to control my emotions, though inside, I was exploding. Rachel sighed, lowered her head for a moment, then looked up at me. I tried, John. But the more I stayed, the more I felt like I was living in a shell. You're too busy with work, with your projects. And I found someone else. Her words were like a sharp knife cutting into my soul. The whole world seemed to collapse, and I didn't know what to do. For so many years, I had put everything into work, into the family, trying to protect it all. But now, it was all shattering. Who? I asked, though I didn't really want to know. But I had to know. David, she said, her voice calm as if she was talking about a close friend. David is the one I've loved for the past 10 years. I felt as though I was being pushed into a deep abyss. Who was David? My best friend, the one I had trusted, the one I saw as a partner in my work? How could I understand this? So, what am I in your life? I asked, my voice trembling, my hands clenched tightly. Rachel looked at me with an unreadable expression, then gently answered, You're the one I used to love, John. But that love is gone now. I can't keep living like this, and I think you can't either. I couldn't say another word. Every emotion in me seemed paralyzed. I could only sit there, watching Rachel leave, walking through the door, leaving me in emptiness. It didn't end there. After Rachel left, everything inside me changed. I didn't just lose my wife. I lost the trust in everything I had built over the years. Emily, my daughter, was the only one left. She didn't say much, but I could see in her eyes that she understood everything. A week later, I decided to dive back into work. Chris and I worked tirelessly to finish the security system project, and gradually, I found my passion and life purpose again. Work became my lifeline, and although it couldn't fill the void Rachel left, at least I could feel alive again. But could I really forget that betrayal? Or was I just trying to cover the pain with work and success? In the following days, I tried to face reality, but at times everything became unbearable. I began to feel like a stranger in my own home, a place that once echoed with the laughter of my children. Rachel had left, but the wounds from her betrayal remained, like a lingering ache that would never go away. Things got worse when I received a call from Rachel's lawyer. They had completed the divorce paperwork, and now they just needed me to sign. I signed quickly with a forced smile. There was nothing left to hold on to, or so I thought. Although I knew this would free me from the chaos of love and betrayal, my heart still felt empty. The truth was, I didn't want to lose Jessica. That day, Emily came home earlier than usual. She walked into the living room, looked at me for a long moment, then sat down beside me. I didn't need to ask anything more. She knew I was hurting deeply, and I knew my daughter was carrying a part of the pain that shouldn't have belonged to her. "I don't want Mom to go," Emily said, her eyes glistening with sadness. "But I know we'll be okay, right, Dad?" I nodded, though deep down I wasn't sure. I didn't want to admit that my relationship with my daughter could also change. But I knew, at this moment, we were all that was left of each other. A week later, I received an unwanted call from David, the man Rachel had been cheating with for all these years. He was an executive at a big company, always appearing calm and confident. Although I didn't want to talk to him, I couldn't avoid it. I couldn't help but wonder, in the back of my mind, who is he? Why did Rachel choose him? David wasn't shy about calling me. His voice was dry, full of challenge. "John, I think we need to talk." I remained silent, partly because I didn't know what to say, partly because I could feel the underlying danger in his tone. "Can we meet somewhere?" David continued, and I couldn't refuse. In truth, I wanted to face him, to understand why it was me, someone who had trusted him. I agreed to meet him at a small cafe outside the city. When I arrived, I saw David sitting in a corner, holding a cup of coffee. He looked at me and gave a slight smile. "John, I understand that you're hurting. So am I. But I think I'm old enough to say that I love Rachel. This isn't just a fleeting satisfaction. It's the feeling I've always been searching for." I didn't say anything, unable to utter a word. Everything was such a huge shock. I had once thought David was my friend, but now, he was the one who had stolen everything I loved. "You know, I didn't want to hurt you. But Rachel was too tired of her current life. She needed something new, and I'm the only one who could provide that." His words felt like a knife cutting through my heart. They were just like the things Rachel had said, but with a more blunt, cold tone. "So what am I? Just an easy replacement for you?" I asked, trying to stay calm even though I was seething inside. David didn't answer immediately. He just looked at me with a calculating gaze, as if he had figured everything out. "What you don't understand, John, is that not everyone can live in the shadows. Rachel needs light. She needs freedom. And I'm the one who can give that to her." I felt like my energy was being drained. He showed no remorse, no guilt whatsoever. He only said things that made me feel stupid, worthless. When I got home, my mood was even heavier. Everything seemed to pile up, and I didn't know what to do next. Everything I had known was no longer true. Rachel had left, not just physically but mentally. Furthermore, I had also lost my trust in friendship and love. But then I remembered Emily. I couldn't let her carry all of this pain. She was the only one left in my life, and I wouldn't let anyone hurt her. A week later, Emily and I sat down together. She told me she was going to start preparing for the college entrance exam. "Dad, I'll be okay. You will be too, right?" I smiled, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could go on. Because nothing was more important than keeping Emily safe in these difficult times. This feeling of comfort was only temporary. Although I had tried to find joy in work, the pain still haunted me. And then, one day, I received a call from Chris, my best friend. He said that a big project was coming up, an opportunity that could change my life and our company. But there was something I didn't know. Rachel and David, the ones who had caused me so much pain, were becoming our biggest competitors. And in this game, no one could escape the punishment of fate. Weeks after meeting with David, things seemed to calm down, but the gloomy feeling inside me never disappeared. Work continued to progress, but I felt like I wasn't truly living, just existing. Still, I had to push through because I knew no one but me could help Emily stay strong in this crisis. One afternoon, while I was working in the office, Chris called. His voice sounded tense, unlike usual. "John, I think we need to meet right now. Something big is happening." Without further explanation, I set aside my work and drove to his office. The unease grew as I saw Chris's worried face. He wasn't the type to worry easily, but this time was different. "John, I don't know where to begin. We're under attack." "Attack?" I asked, not understanding what was going on. "Yes, our security system has been hacked, and important information has leaked out. Information that could destroy our entire project. Not only that, but I suspect this is a targeted attack from someone on the outside. At that moment, my mind was spinning. The system we had spent months building was now under attack, but who could have done this? Only a few people in the company had access to these critical data. I think we may be being watched by Langford and David, Chris said, his voice tense. They're not happy with our success, and I suspect they're trying to sabotage us. A real storm had arrived. David and Langford had not only shattered my personal life, but now they were hurting my work and my future. I hated them, but at the same time, I realized I had been too careless, not cautious enough with the people hiding in the shadows, waiting to take me down. The next day, I decided to meet David face to face. There was no other choice. I had to confront him once more to understand what was going on. The fear and tension filled me as I walked into the cafe where we had met before. This time, I was no longer the weak man I had been the day before. I would not let him continue manipulating me. When I walked in, David was sitting there, his usual smug expression. But this time, I didn't see any friendliness in his eyes. "John, you finally made it. I knew you couldn't avoid this for long." "David, I've thought about everything. A week ago, I met with Chris. We discovered that our system was breached, and all the evidence points back to sources that you and Langford could be involved with." David didn't change his expression, but I could feel the tension in his voice. "You think I'm behind all this? You can't be that stupid. Don't forget, John, I'm not the only one capable of doing this." I stared at him, not backing down. "So who do you think did this? Who are you protecting? Langford, right? Or is it you, playing this game with me?" David took a deep breath, then looked at me with a smirk. "John, life isn't what you think. It's a power game. If you want to survive, you have to know how to play by the rules of people like me and Langford." I couldn't take it anymore. His words truly pushed me to my limits. "I won't let you destroy everything I've built. The company, the family, everything I've lived for. You will pay for this." David shook his head, a cold smile spreading across his face. "You think I'll be afraid of your threats? Remember, John, I'm the one with power. You're just a failed man, clinging to things that are already gone." After this meeting, I knew I had to act. I couldn't just sit there and wait for others to destroy everything I had worked for. I decided to shift to a new strategy. I would fight back using my own weapon, technology. That very evening, Chris and I began investigating the hack further. Our security system was breached from an anonymous IP address. We did everything we could to trace the culprit, and as the leaked data slowly got retrieved, we discovered that this attack had help from an outside party, possibly one of the major competitors I had overlooked. Things became even more intense when I realized that not only Langford and David wanted to take me down. There were others, people I couldn't have imagined, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the chance to destroy everything I had built. Emily was still by my side, but the more time passed, the more I felt like I was losing control. This struggle wasn't just about holding the company together. It was about fighting against the raging storms that were tearing my life apart, awakening the pain I thought I could forget. But I couldn't lose. I had already lost too much, and I wouldn't let those villains keep winning. After the tense meeting with David, I returned home, my mind full of chaotic thoughts. Everything seemed to be on the verge of completely falling apart. Work, family, and relationships had been tested beyond their limits. But I knew I couldn't stop. I had to find a way to resolve everything, protect what I had left, and seek revenge for the betrayal. Every day, I spent more time at the company, working with Chris, trying to perfect the security system to prevent future attacks. But even in those tense work moments, I couldn't escape thoughts of Rachel and David. The anger and pain felt like a wound that wouldn't heal. I couldn't even recognize myself anymore. I had become a different person, a man living for the sole purpose of winning this battle. One late afternoon, while I was working at the office, I received an unexpected call from an unknown number. Without thinking much, I answered. "John, are you ready to face what's coming?" The voice came through the phone, mocking. I immediately recognized it as David. He always knew how to make me uncomfortable and tense with words like that. I gritted my teeth. "I don't know what you want, David, but I won't let you keep ruining my life." He sneered. "You think you can fight me? Remember, you're not just fighting me, but a much larger force. Everything you're trying to protect, your company, your family, can all disappear in a moment. I couldn't take it anymore. Don't think you can keep pushing me around. I won't stop. You can't defeat me, David. The call ended in a chilling silence. It felt like everything was beginning to shift, and his words kept echoing in my head. Yes, I was up against a force I couldn't simply ignore, but I couldn't allow myself to be afraid. I couldn't. My company was going through a tough time. Even though we had completed several key parts of the project, I couldn't stop thinking about the hidden dangers. Big government contracts were waiting, and I couldn't let any factors delay this success. But while I poured my heart into work, I didn't realize that another battle was happening right within my own family. One day, when I came home after a tense meeting, Emily was sitting in the living room waiting for me. She didn't say anything, just looked at me with eyes full of worry. The heavy feeling in the air made me realize something was wrong. "Dad, I can't keep living like this," Emily said, her voice weak but firm. "I don't know what to do when everything around me becomes so confusing. Mom, she doesn't care about me anymore. And I feel like you're drifting away from me too." I couldn't imagine that my daughter had to carry these pains. She was only 17, but what I saw in her eyes made me unable to say anything. I knew I had failed as a father at the time when she needed me the most. "It's not your fault, Emily. Don't think that," I said, sitting down beside her, trying to comfort her. But inside, I felt powerless. Emily looked at me with eyes full of disappointment. "I need you, but you're not there for me. Do you understand? Mom has changed, and you just keep working." It felt like a slap to my face. I knew I was working hard for the family's future, but I had neglected Emily's feelings. I realized that to defeat David and Langford, I might sacrifice everything, but if I kept neglecting my daughter, I would lose everything. The next day, I decided to do what I had been avoiding. I had to face the past and my mistakes. I met with Emily and told her I would change. I wouldn't let her suffer another minute. But that wasn't all. The feeling of becoming stronger also meant the real battle was just beginning. I wasn't just fighting to protect the company, but to save my family. I decided to break through in my work, to run the company in ways I had never done before. I wouldn't just be the man betrayed. I would be the final victor. That evening, when Chris and I were sitting in the office, I received a call from an unknown number. An uneasy feeling overwhelmed me. John, the voice of Foster King, Langford's father, came through the phone, cold and authoritative. "I hear you're having trouble with my son and some others, but I don't want to see you destroyed. If you're smart, you'll stop now before it's too late." Foster's words were like a strong blow to me. There was no retreat now. This battle had gone beyond my limits. I was up against an empire, with people who would stop at nothing to achieve their goals. But I was ready. Everything had gone too far, and I couldn't stop now. This time, I wasn't just going to protect the company or my family. I was going to destroy their empire to prove that, despite being betrayed, I still had the power to control my life. After the threatening call from Foster King, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. But instead of fear, that fear only made me more determined. Foster didn't understand that I had gone too far to turn back. I wasn't just fighting to protect the company, the family. I was fighting to regain control of my life, to return the self-respect and fairness that I deserved. The next day, I decided not to just sit there and wait for the next attack from them. I called Chris and told him to prepare everything for the biggest confrontation yet. Although I didn't completely trust those around me, I knew Chris and I had built the company together from the hard beginnings, and now was the time to trust him. We began to plan. I not only needed to protect the company, but also needed to find a way to defeat Langford and David, the ones who had secretly destroyed my life. But I couldn't do this alone. I needed more support from those I trusted, and that's when I turned to Philip Hughes, someone I had met before in the battle with King Carpets. Philip, although a competitor in the industry, I knew he was a man of integrity. Moreover, he had been fired by Langford because of truth and principles in his work. I believed that if I could convince him, we could find a way to defeat Langford and Foster once and for all. One late evening, I arrived at Philip's house, where he was living with his family in a quiet area outside the city. He opened the door and looked at me with a strange expression, as if he hadn't expected me to come to him in this situation. "John, You seem to be in a very complicated situation. I've heard about what's happening to you, but I don't think I can help you, Philip said, his face filled with concern. I sat down and looked into his eyes. Philip, I can't do this alone. I need your help. If we face Langford and Foster together, I think we'll have a chance. You were the only one who didn't bow down to them. We can do this. Philip looked at me, thought for a moment, then nodded. I can't sit by and watch them do this to you. But we have to be very careful. Langford and Foster are not easy to defeat. In the following days, Philip and I gathered resources, arranged secret meetings, and began collecting critical information about king carpets and the shady activities of Langford and Foster. Chris also fully supported the work, and together, we had a detailed plan. However, the most unexpected thing happened. Another attack came from my own family. One morning, as I arrived at the company, I received a call from Emily, her voice frantic. Dad, I don't know what to do anymore. Mom and Langford came to see me. They said they would solve everything, but I feel like they're threatening me. I don't want you to do anything stupid, Emily said, her voice full of worry. My heart seemed to stop. Rachel had gone to see my daughter, and now she was using Emily as a pawn in her power game. I couldn't let this continue. I couldn't let my daughter suffer anymore. Don't worry, Emily. You'll stay here with me. I'll protect you, I said over the phone, trying to keep my voice calm, though I felt the anger boiling within me. After the call, I immediately went to Emily's house. When I arrived, I saw my daughter standing in front of the door, her eyes filled with exhaustion and fear. Mom isn't my mom anymore, Dad. I don't know what she wants from me. She's changed too much. I walked over to my daughter, hugging her tightly. You don't need to worry anymore, Emily. I'll never let anyone hurt you. As for the company, Philip and I made a breakthrough. We discovered that Langford and Foster were involved in a major corruption scheme related to local real estate contracts. This was the key to uncovering the truth that I had been blind to for so long. If we could reveal this truth, we wouldn't just defeat them in the industry, but we could also topple their empire of power. We began planning to release this information at the right time, preparing for a fierce legal battle. But while we were grappling with the evidence and documents, an unexpected event happened. Langford and Foster found out what we were doing. One evening, while I was in the office with Chris and Philip preparing for the next step, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. I started to feel like everything had reached an irreversible point. John, Foster's voice came through the phone. If you keep going down this path, I won't just ruin your company. I'll ruin everything you've ever loved. You can't beat us. This time, I no longer felt fear. I only felt one thing, determination. It was time to make them pay for what they had caused, and I wouldn't stop until I achieved my goal. I told Foster just one thing before hanging up. We'll see who the real winner is in the end. The call from Foster made me feel like I had been splashed with a bucket of cold water, but it also sparked my determination. I couldn't turn back anymore. Everything, from my company to my family, was threatened by people who felt no remorse. And if I didn't do something, I would lose everything. Chris and Philip sat with me in the office, their eyes filled with concern, but I could feel their resilience. We started gathering evidence, following every lead on Langford and Foster. But I knew there was only one way to defeat them: bring the truth to light. We have to strike, I said, my voice firm, even though doubts still lingered inside me. If we just fight with evidence and law, we'll be crushed. But if we make everyone see them for who they really are, frauds, corrupt, we can bring them down. Chris nodded. Then we need undeniable proof. Not just the company-related stuff, but also their darker actions. That entire night, we worked nonstop, searching through contracts, payments that Langford and Foster had made for the real estate projects we suspected had been fraudulent. But just as I gathered a pile of important documents, I received a text from Emily. Dad, Mom came to my house. I don't know what to do anymore. She's really angry, and I feel like she's not my mom anymore. I didn't have time to think any further. I hurriedly drove home, the suffocating feeling in my chest as I thought about Rachel possibly hurting Emily. But when I arrived, what surprised me more was Rachel's cold expression as she stood in front of my house. John, I didn't come to talk to you, Rachel said, her voice sharp like a knife. I came to talk to our daughter. Emily stood inside, her face full of worry, but she didn't say anything. She seemed to not know what to do as her mother stood in front of her, cold and distant. "You don't need to do this, Rachel," I said, my voice cold. "Our daughter is not a pawn in your game." Rachel stared at me for a long moment, then finally turned and walked away. I couldn't understand why she had become like this, but the only thing I knew at that moment was that Emily needed me. I hugged my daughter tightly. "I won't let anyone hurt you," I whispered, feeling stronger as I looked into my daughter's eyes. Everything I had gone through in my life had led to this moment, to protect my family. A few days later, when I thought everything had calmed down, the situation became even more complicated. I received a call from an unfamiliar number, and when I answered, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "John, I'm Joyce, Langford's ex-wife. I need to talk to you. What you're doing could cause all of us big trouble." Joyce's voice came through the phone. For the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. Joyce hadn't spoken to me for years, but now she wanted to meet me. "Let's meet. We need to sort this out." When we met at a quiet cafe, I realized Joyce wasn't the same woman I once knew. She had changed, like a strong woman, no longer weak or afraid like before. "John, I'm here for my daughter and for you," Joyce said, her voice calm but determined. "I know everything about Langford, about Foster, and I think I can help you." I looked at her, suspicious. "Help me? Why would you want to help me?" She smirked. "I don't want to see my daughter and other children dragged into this war. Langford and Foster are not people I want to be involved with anymore. They've been lying to me for years. I want revenge, and I think you do too." I understood that feeling. We had both lived lives full of deceit and betrayal. But now, I realized I had no other choice. If I wanted to win, I had to play by their rules. From then on, Joyce provided me with crucial information about Langford and Foster's shady dealings in the business world. Secrets that I could never have uncovered on my own were now revealed, and I had powerful weapons to fight them. Chris and Philip got to work using the evidence we gathered to develop a surprise attack on Langford and Foster's empire. But throughout this process, one thing I had to face was my own insecurity. Could I trust all those around me? Could I keep everything intact when these enemies showed no conscience? But there was no more time for second-guessing. We were ready, and I knew that no matter what the cost, I wouldn't let Langford and Foster win. My battle with the ones who betrayed me was no longer just about the company. It became a battle for survival, a battle to regain power and honor. As Chris and Philip and I prepared to release the information Joyce had provided, I couldn't help but feel the tension in every passing moment. I had lived in the shadows for too long, and now it was time to let the light shine on the dark secrets Langford and Foster had kept hidden. However, as we began preparing the documents and evidence to make public, an unexpected event occurred that made everything more complicated than ever. One evening, when I was at home, sitting with Emily and trying to create a cozy atmosphere for the family, I suddenly received a call from an unfamiliar number. I picked up the phone, and the voice on the other end startled me. "John, if you don't stop now, we won't just destroy your company. We'll destroy your family too." Langford's voice came through, threatening and cold. Each word he spoke felt like a knife piercing my heart. There was no retreat now. Just as he said, if I stopped, I would lose everything. But if I continued, I might drag my whole family into the mess he was creating. "I'm not afraid of you, Langford," I replied, trying to keep my composure, though inside, a wave of anger was rising. "You will pay for what you've done." He sneered. "You don't understand, John. You're too deep into this game. No one can save you. I'll show you what the real end looks like." The call ended in silence, and I knew this was just the beginning. Langford and Foster wouldn't leave me alone. They would do whatever it took to crush me, but I was too determined to back down. The next day, I sat with Chris and Philip in the office, feeling like everything was slowly being controlled by outside forces. We continued our work, finalizing the documents proving Langford and Foster's corruption. But inside, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. If they found out what we were doing, they would strike back immediately. "We need to approach influential people, those who can help us," Philip said, looking at me with determination in his eyes. "If we bring this information to the public, it could cause a huge shock. But if we do it right, we'll bring them down." I nodded, but deep down, I still wasn't at ease. It felt like everything was about to collapse, even though we were close to the final stages of our plan. At that moment, I received a message from Joyce, saying that Langford had discovered what we were doing and was preparing to launch an attack on our company. They're not just sabotaging your company. They're trying to ruin your image in the eyes of the public, Joyce wrote in the message. You need to act fast. If you don't, everything will be destroyed before you're ready. My anxiety intensified. Every passing second was a tense battle against time. But I couldn't stop. No matter what, I had to keep going. After receiving the warning from Joyce, I decided to take the necessary steps to protect both the company and my family. Chris and I prepared the next steps, while Philip contacted some trusted journalists and lawyers to help us bring this information to light. We had everything carefully prepared, and one evening, when all was ready, I received a call from Emily. She sounded worried, a little shaky. "Dad, Mom and Langford are outside my house. They're saying they won't leave us alone if you don't stop everything right now." My whole body went cold. This was the moment I had to decide. Stop and protect my daughter, or continue the battle, even if it meant making things even more dangerous. I couldn't stop, not because I didn't love Emily, but because if I didn't fight, I would lose everything. And I couldn't let those who had deceived me take everything I had built. I sighed, looked into my daughter's eyes, and said, "Emily, I won't give up. I'll do everything to protect you." That night, Chris, Philip, and I took the next step in our plan. We had contacted major newspapers, lawyers, and the media to prepare for a full-on information assault against Langford and Foster. When the evidence was made public, it would no longer just be a business war. It would be a public fight against the corruption and crimes they had hidden for years. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, a decision that would determine everything. If I succeeded, I would crush Langford and Foster's empire. But if I failed, I could lose everything. The company, my family, and even my life. Everything was on the brink of collapsing, and I couldn't turn back. This battle had to end, and I would be the ultimate victor. That night, as Chris and Philip and I prepared for the final phase of our plan, the tension felt like a ticking bomb. The evidence we had gathered would change everything. It wasn't just the documents about Langford and Foster's corruption in real estate projects. It was also the calls, the emails we had uncovered during our investigation, all confirming they had deceived society. This was the only weapon I had to fight back against them. As we prepared the documents to send out, I received a call from Joyce. At this point, I wasn't worried about what she might say. I knew she was no longer standing by Langford's side, but had fully chosen to stand with me in this battle. "John, Langford knows what we're preparing. You need to get this information out fast. If you don't, we won't have any chance left." Joyce's voice came through, firm but also filled with concern. "We'll do it now. No more delays," I said, feeling like an important game was about to end. The next morning, as we prepared to release the documents to the media, I felt like I was stepping into an irreversible war. These documents could not only bring down Langford and Foster, but completely change my life. Everything could take a completely different turn, but I wasn't afraid anymore. As soon as we sent the documents out, the information started spreading through the media. Within hours, Langford and Foster's names were smeared across the news. They couldn't not react. They began to exert pressure, but by then, it was too late. The world knew they were corrupt, opportunists exploiting others for their own gain. Meanwhile, I received a call from Emily. This time, she wasn't just worried about her mother, but also about what was happening. "Dad, Mom and Langford are at my house. Can you come? I don't know what to do," Emily said with a trembling voice, and I realized that we had been pushed to the limit. I rushed to my car and drove home. My heart was filled with worry, but I knew I had to stop when I saw Emily. She needed me, and I couldn't leave my daughter in this moment. When I arrived at the house, the scene left me stunned. Rachel and Langford were standing in front of Emily, and the coldness in their eyes made it unbearable for me. Rachel hadn't given up, but Langford no longer wore the smug look he once had. He knew everything had collapsed. "I told you, John, this game is not yours," Langford said, his voice full of anger. "You think you can take us down so easily?" I stepped in, standing between them. "It's not me. It's you who have lost everything. You think you can control everything, But today is the day you'll pay the price. Rachel looked at me, her eyes full of disappointment, but I couldn't care about that anymore. I no longer saw her the way I used to, the wife I loved. Now, she was just a woman who had betrayed me. It was time for everything to end. After I took Emily outside, we decided to officially file a lawsuit against Langford and Foster, not just for corruption but also for the actions they had caused in my family. The investigations proceeded quickly, and over the following weeks, everything became clearer. Langford and Foster were investigated, and the irrefutable evidence led both of them to face serious charges. I still couldn't believe it was all over. Finally, justice had been served, but it came at a very high cost. I had lost so much in this battle: a family, a wife, and the years I had spent in deceit. However, I also realized that life cannot be dictated by others. This battle, though painful, helped me find myself again. On the last day of the trial, when Langford and Foster were sentenced, I stood outside the courtroom, looking at the door where these two villains would emerge, and I felt a strange sense of relief. No one could manipulate my life anymore. Emily, my daughter, had decided to pursue her education and step into a new future, one where she no longer had to bear the shadow of her mother. I was proud of my daughter, of the maturity she had shown. As for me, I had learned an important lesson. Betrayal can strip away everything you once had, but no one can take away your right to choose and your resilience. Life goes on, and I will not let those who betrayed me determine my fate. Even though life may push you to the edge, you can always rise, rebuild from the ruins, and find yourself again. Betrayal does not define you. You are the one who decides who you will become.